Okay,
Thank you very much, Jora. Thank you, everybody, for joining the panel discussion organized by the ARPA Institute. I know there are a lot of things that everybody is doing and busy, so we appreciate you joining us. Before we start, I'd like to say a few words about ARPA and its activities in Armenia. We have been working in Armenia since 1992 from its foundation, and ARPA Institute works on providing expertise from various professions, from various areas. And we work with the universities, the institutes of the academy, as well as various ministries to help advance science, technology, health, education, and various other areas. We have currently a couple of important projects that we're working on. The most important being establishing the first clean room, scientific clean room in the Alekhanian National Lab, the former Physics Institute, which is going to be a 1,000 class clean room. And the work has already started and it's in progress, and we expect things to complete by the end of October at the most. And we probably will have an opening ceremony in the third week of October. We are also working with the Ministry of Education, Science, Culture, and Sports to start expanding science fairs in all schools of Armenia. Last year, the first official science fair was organized in Armenia by the government of Armenia with the help of the ARPA Institute. And this year, we're working with them, training teachers and helping them to organize science fairs in each school, and also to guide the students in selecting project and working and developing the project and also presenting it. We also work with other institutes, like, for example, the Chemical Physics Institute, Physical Research Institute, the Molecular Biology Institute, various other institutes, where we not only provide instrumentation, but also guidance and sometimes lectures and expertise. We also obviously work with the universities, both the Polytechnic and the Yerevan State University. And our main message is to create such scientific centers that will attract diasporan scientists. In other words, the mode that now science has been working in Armenia is essentially a survival mode. Each scientist gets a small amount until for a year or so, and by that amount, of course, it's not possible to actually do a big project and create really important research. So we think that the best way is to consolidate our resources in Armenia, rather than having 4 or 5 different institutes which all work in the biology or biotechnology area, create one important and big center for that kind of expertise, and provide all the instrumentation, train the scientists, bring even outside help, and then start developing big projects that can include many of the scientists that work together and solve problems. And that way, they will be able to develop really high-level science and research, and then attract the attention of the world. So we have been preaching that for several years, but now we think that we've reached a point where we cannot wait any longer, and that should happen. Same thing with the schools. We think that it is time to actually revamp the school system, the whole school system, and create a curriculum that's in line with the modern teaching methodologies and also the material, and also train the teachers so they can be teaching in an effective way. So that is what we do, and we continue meeting with the various ministers, discussing the possibility of achieving these kind of goals, and also working with the universities and trying to see if we can help in any way, either by mentoring or by providing expertise that maybe can help the professors or the students. And we are trying to see how to do it. There are now a number of groups of diasporan scientists who are highly interested in helping Armenia, but they essentially are not sure how to do it, what is the best way of doing it. And we are trying to create a means of connecting Armenia with the diaspora to make it an effective connection. So without further ado, I'd like to now introduce our moderator, Professor Arthur Davoyan, who is a board member of Arpa Institute, and he has been very actively helping Armenia in various ways. Arthur, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hagop. Thank you for the introduction of ARP activities, and it's a pleasure to organize this and arrange this panel discussion. I think we have Karen Tanoyan, who wanted also to share some thoughts about their activities before we proceed to the panel discussion. So Karen, can you please give an overview for several minutes here of what your guys up to?
Sure. Thank you very much, Baron Panosyan, Baron Davoyan. I'm happy to represent the Armenian Bar Association. The Armenian Bar Association is the professional organization representing Armenian attorneys of Armenian background. And one would think that what does the Bar Association and lawyers have to do with Armenian innovation and making Armenian innovation and technology hub? But actually, and I want to thank again the ARPA Institute and Baron Panosyan specifically in the spirit of cooperation between Armenian organizations for inviting me and allowing me to say a few words on this topic. In 2018, the Armenian Bar Association's main meeting was held in Columbia University, where we hosted a conference focused on how to make Armenia and technological and high-tech hub of innovation. And from that, the Armenian Bar Association actually started a committee on intellectual property and information technology with the goal of improving that field in Armenia, which resulted in tremendous success the following year and a number of different changes happening to the landscape. So in 2019, the government of the Republic of Armenia declared high-tech to be a strategic area of focus for the country's growth. And it wanted to enhance its efforts in promoting smart, sustainable, inclusive growth and trigger high-tech innovative startup ecosystems and create favorable conditions for local and foreign direct investments in this high-tech sector. As many of us know, for more than a decade, the technology sector in Armenia has been one of the highest growing, and it's been growing at a pace of 25% per year. The sector has even higher growth potential and can become a regional hub for serving as a gateway to many European and American and other technological hubs, as well as to deep tech centers surrounding Armenia, for example, in Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and in Iran. These preconditions exist for further development in Armenia, including an existing intellectual property and corporate legal framework. As we all know, much of this development and economic prosperity that follows afterwards cannot exist with a proper legal and regulatory foundation. Many people in the fields and in the business will recognize how important this is. So the Armenian government received strong support in the enhancement of this framework and high-level experts in the diaspora, including from the Armenian Bar Association in the United States, Canada. In the messages, you see a link to our website if you are interested, from the United States, Canada, Europe, Russia, and other countries as well, who are committed to helping the development of a robust and modern legislative and regulatory framework to govern intellectual property and the corporate laws that regulate this field. These changes are necessary for boosting research, development, and innovation in Armenia and help promote sustainable technological development and growth. In this framework, we will help establish Armenia as a regional leader in intellectual property protection and advanced technologies. However, when we started these efforts, we noticed that there are significant deficiencies in the laws, the regulations, and the customs in Armenia relating to the protection and enforcement of these innovations, their intellectual property, and the rights of investors in these fields. Local representatives of the startup and high-tech communities, some of which are here on the screen, identifies a number of deficiencies that acted as big factors that hindered innovation and prevented the translation of this innovation into viable business enterprises in Armenia. Some of these big hurdles were things of the lack of being able to get sufficient damages, meaning compensation or sanctions under Armenian law for violations of somebody's intellectual property or somebody's innovation, infringement on their innovation. It wasn't explicitly possible to patent or otherwise protect software products or innovation. The Armenian Intellectual Property Agency had limited capacity and was limited in the number of services and the types of services that it could provide. Armenian corporate law wasn't very well suited for venture capital or angel investments to be easily provided. There wasn't sufficient protection of minority shareholders under Armenian corporate law, and there wasn't sufficient protection of IP in educational and scientific institutions where a lot of the research and foundational development start. So the Armenian Bar Association formed this Intellectual Property and Information Technology Committee in 2018, and over the following year, worked on with a number of colleagues, like I mentioned, from the United States, Canada, Europe, Russia, and most importantly, practitioners in Armenia, with the government ministries and agencies, most importantly, the High-Tech Ministry, the Ministry of the Economy, and the Armenian Intellectual Property Agency, to revamp and reform a number of points in the legislation and in the regulations that pertain to intellectual property and corporate law, which resulted in a presentation of a package of reform suggestions in October 2019 to audience including government officials, members of the National Assembly, legal professionals, professionals in public and private businesses such as startups and investors, as well as academies of the scientists and of the sciences and the universities, as well as other individuals and entities engaged with research, science, and development and innovation. And as a result of that package of reforms that was presented, many of them got implemented as legislation in Armenia. And despite the delay caused by the war, many of the suggestions and recommendations are now enacted law in Armenia. For example, in Armenia, it is now explicitly permitted to be able to protect software by patents. So you can patent software in Armenia. The Armenian Intellectual Property Agency now conducts full examinations substantively of patent applications. And we are working on a number of other improvements to the laws and regulations that I mentioned earlier that will affect the ecosystem and allow up-and-coming startup companies as well as established companies and businesses in the field to not only continue innovating, but to keep that innovation in Armenia, to build up the economic base and reduce the brain drain that was talked about often from Armenia, so that Armenia becomes the technological and innovation hub that we all want it to be. And as this topic of of this panel and this presentation. So
yes, and I think it's a great
segue
to the panel discussion, and I'm very happy to see all of the activities that you guys are doing at the Armenian Bar Association, and thanks for presenting it. It seems that one of the points that I think we're going to discuss later on is infrastructure, and legal infrastructure is extremely important. And perhaps later on we're going to have some kind of discussion in a larger format on the challenges of legal infrastructure here. But let's get back to what you said. Essentially, is the technology hub, and how can we make Armenia being a technology hub, and how can we really see technologies being fostered, developed, and essentially created in Armenia. And for this purpose, we have panel today that will try to address these very challenging issues. Actually, each of these questions is extremely complex. And the panelists, I'm very pleased and happy to introduce our panelists. So the first panelist that we have is Aram Pakchanyan, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing correctly the last name.
Perfect pronunciation, thank you.
So Aram is the chairman of the board of trustees of IPE Foundation, and from 2014 to 2020, he was principal of the IPE School, an innovative school in Armenia, well known for both inside the country and abroad. And in his other role, Aram is also vice president of EBI Corporation, an international leader in digital innovation solutions since 1993. And he has a lot of other credentials, and we will be happy to hear from him. Our other panelist is Al Yesayan, and Al Yesayan is a serial entrepreneur and has founded and co-founded many companies, including Interlin Air, an aerial data analytics company in Carmel in US. And his most recent company is Icon Apps, that is serving as global head of product strategy. And he has also served as a global head of product strategy and marketing for Opera Solutions and the global big data CEO. So essentially a lot of data related companies and a lot of companies that are doing modern and up-to-date technology, essentially like pushing forward. I know Ali also are heavily involved with not only in US as companies, but also in Armenia itself. And I know that right now you're in Armenia, so we're gonna hear about that a little bit more. And other panelists that we have, the final panelist, the third panelist that we have is Hrant Khachaturian, and he is mathematician. He did his PhD in graph theory at Yerevan State University, and now he's director of Yerevan Neural Networks, Yerevan NN, which is machine learning research laboratory. I presume in Armenia, right, in Yerevan. He's also organizing, he has this platform, Ketake.club, which is a platform that connects people from Armenia to people in the diaspora for supervising. So all of our panelists are heavily involved in this or that form, in research activities, in startup activities, in venture capital activities, and bringing this kind of innovation into Armenia and outside of Armenia. So the way I would suggest we can proceed with the panel is that I will give time to each of the panelists about 5 minutes to present kind of their thinking and their thoughts on how to make Armenia as a technology hub. Then we'll have some kind of questions and answers. So we'll talk a little bit, and I also welcome the audience to put their questions in chat. And towards the final kind of hour, towards the end of the hour, we will kind of read these questions and see what panelists can answer. So I'll give the word. I think I've introduced Aram first, so I'll give the word and the stage to Aram. So Aram, please, 5 minutes to discuss on Technology Hub.
Arthur, thank you. I'll really do everything to fit into 5 minutes, and probably will save some time for other speakers. It's not that there is nothing is happening in Armenia towards becoming a technological hub. It's actually, there's a lot of momentum around it. It's basically being now discussed and that very soon the most rich people in Armenia would be scientists, because Nubar Afyan is officially now the richest person, and he's a scientist. And there are some few people like the group of scientists in CRISP that are on their way to become one of the most successful companies in their area. So it's happening now. It's changing the landscape, but there is a lot to do systematically to help this momentum go further instead of losing its speed and ultimately stalling. So first and foremost, I myself being a person who is very often serving as a judge member in different kind of startup competitions, my major problem was always that there are very few startups in Armenia that are based on science, and that's not because they don't want to be based on science, or it's not a viable way of establishing a startup. It's actually exact opposite. Science is the best place where you can find ideas that can be converted into business, because it provides you a global competitive edge, and that's something you can really rely on for a pretty prolonged time as you move towards a more successful company. But it's not happening because there is not enough scientific research, viable scientific research that can be converted. So in general, the concept is that any technological economy is rooted in science. And the science in Armenia was mostly missing an ecosystem approach. It's all segmented. The problem being that the pieces and parts of our science historically used to be parts of a larger system of the Soviet Union. So they have never actually learned through these 30 years of existence as an independent country, they've never actually learned how to collaborate to each other. They still perceive themselves as silos, as separate entities, and any push towards let's do something together, let's join laboratories, let's look at a more complex problem jointly, never worked out properly, because it's still that silo thinking, and none of the science bodies that were responsible for development of science was able to trigger the proper development of ecosystems. So we do have some science effort. It's fragmented already. It is becoming even more fragmented because very often it's based on grants that are received per interest of different organizations, global organizations, global funding, or some research where you can find yourself in, but for a period of time. And then the same scientists are again on their own in a search for another way of continuing. So there's no systematic effort being built as a system. And this is one of the major problems that I see, and there is something important and large to be done here to convert this fragmented situation into a well-aligned strategic science management, which is not happening right now. This is the first point. The second point is related to education. We have this egg and hen situation with education, where that is also the same egg and hen situation with economy and science. So there will be no developing economy if there is no science. It's hard to have an efficient science where there is no economy that asks for interesting ideas and innovation research. So, but the same is with education. Education feeds people into space where, when it's open, but when it's not open, education can't provide those people, and vice versa. When you don't have science, it's hard to educate people. It's hard to find good educators that will educate people. So this is another problem that we have to figure out how to get a solution for, and the solution is that we should find ways, and probably very, very innovative ways, some hybrid models, some ways to connect education to a wider picture, to make our universities feel themselves not just local entities that are serving the local economy, but somehow feel that they are actually serving a global economy, which is happening in terms of companies that are using people from these universities, in terms of development of business concepts They all look at the global market, but the education, the universities themselves doesn't feel that. They don't feel themselves being part of a global play, which has to change, and this is very important. And the last issue I want to tackle is that humanities in most of our universities are struggling. They are not taught well. They are not developing well. We have very little, scientific, proper, high-quality scientific research in humanities, and the outcome of that is that they are not valued. Like if you go to a school that kind of focuses on STEM subjects, you'll find that the children there doesn't know basics of language. They don't know basics of, history. They don't know people. So when they're out and they do some research, they don't understand people, and they don't understand how to fit what they can do to what is needed by people, by reality. They don't really perceive reality properly. So this is something that we have to focus on in a global scale. Not even, what I mean is that, yes, we want a technological country, but any developed technological country has developed humanities. And the best results now, as we can see, are on the cross between humanities and technology. So these are the three topics I wanted to raise, and probably I'm done. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Aram. So just a brief summary here. So what you're saying essentially that we need a science-based economy, that startups are appearing and emerging from science. Science in Armenia right now is fragmented, and we need some pathways to basically bring it all together and connect it to a global economy and global scientific community. The third one that is kind of as a subset of that, or related or a parallel to that, is that education is not ready to meet these needs. So it's not kind of plugged into this global economy. And it would be great to think not like locally, but globally, as you mentioned. And the final aspect, that we are focusing on STEM a lot, but we are omitting the humanities as a part of the game, which is an important part of the game that is going to bring other aspects of the infrastructure that is needed to be created. All right, great. Thank you, Aram. So let's get to another panelist. Al, could you please give your point of view here on the how to make Armenia as a technology hub?
Sure. I want to start with 6 words. Why, how, commitment, and execution, mindset, and reality. I think before we can answer the question of the how, we have to answer the question of why. The world is going through a transformation. It's not just Armenia, it's the entire world. And humanity is trying to figure out its next sort of huge transformations. And at least in my experience, being engaged with Armenia for the last 22 years, I think we've done a great job in taking care of a lot of technical requirements, if you will. Ecosystem, connectivity, bringing in experts. And recently, like this year, I think there's $400 or $500 million of capital that has been invested. But the question of why has still not been answered as a society. Why do we need, why do we want Armenia to be a tech hub? And I think that the way that I've answered that question over and over again has been because there's really no business that is not a technology business anymore. Every business is touched with technology. Now then the question becomes, how do you make sure that the conditions exist to create a technological based or knowledge based economy, which points to the education system. But even before that, it's a question of commitment. Look, the answers or the methods or the formulas are all out there. Many nations have already achieved those heights. And I would say Armenia has also achieved some level of success on that path. The question is, how do you do it faster, and how do you make sure that that disseminates across society and it's not limited to a particular hub? The whole question of hubs is about networks. It's about ecosystems. And I'm so happy to hear what Karen just presented with regards to the legal framework and other things. So a hub by nature is about networks. It's about people learning from each other, people supporting each other, people investing in each other, people teaching each other, and et cetera, et cetera. The question of commitment, it really is everybody that's online and everybody that online knows. And you look at what has happened in the last 10 years. I think I did the first technology startup mixer in 2011, November of 2011, specifically November 3rd of 2011. And in 10 years, look at what a small number of people working together has been able to achieve. You know, in 10 years ago, when I was saying that we can have 500 startups in the Armenian ecosystem, people would laugh at me. But the question is of commitment. If you have a commitment, if you have a goal, and that if you can engage and enroll others for that goal, then it's a matter of mechanics. It's a matter of going through the hard work of building towards those futures. So the question of why, we need to answer it properly, because it's not a question of how. All the formulas are out there. All the paths are out there. Of course, there's Armenian, version of it, if you will, but it's not that complex, to be honest with you. I've been to 32 countries. I've been a student of Israel and Singapore for 30 years. And, more recent examples, Estonia and others, it is not rocket science. It's a matter of it's a matter of commitment. And if you don't commit, then you're doing academic exercises. The question of education, we have hundreds of very well-skilled professors and educators and lawyers and engineers and scientists all over the world that can be that catalytical power that kind of allows and creates the ecosystem for Armenia to be a hub. But first we have to answer the question of why. Then the second question is of commitment. And with that, I'll stop and yield.
Thanks, Al. So just kind of as a brief summary here, what you're saying is essentially that we need first to understand what we want in the end of the day. What is the goal? What is the vision, right? And then based on that,
no. First is why. First is yes. Why.
Why, which why means like why we should want, why we want to do it, right? And then
it's a matter of psychology. It's a matter of why do you want Armenia to be a hub? The why is we want to have a society that is sustainable, that is prosperous, that is secure. That's the why. The what, the what and the how come after the why. The why is because if the survival of a nation is based on its knowledge workers, it's based and to expand that knowledge worker base, it's the why. Once we answer the why, the what and the how will follow very rapidly. Sorry, correct. I just wanted to kind of make sure that I emphasize that.
Correct. Thank you. So why? That's the question to address. And once we understand that this question is addressed, then essentially what we need to do is we need to group together, which is the commitment part, and make sure that we do make the why part happening, right? So that's my understanding of it. Okay, great. Hrant, you want to kind of say several things here about your vision on Armenia being a technology hub?
Yeah, thank you. All mentioned 6 words, and the 6th one was reality. So I'd like to share one slide that I prepared that, in my opinion, somehow gives an understanding of what is the reality in Armenian tech sector now. So these are a few numbers from publicly available sources, but I think not everyone, even in the field, knows these numbers. So I would like to highlight them. So it's a hard task to understand how many people actually work in the tech sector in Armenia, and the best estimate I know is from the official sources, that comes from the tax authorities. They say that as of 2020, Armenia had around 19,000 people working in the tech sector, and that's 22% more than in 2019. So the methodology has problems here, but we still have to get better numbers. So in 2021, only this year, so tech companies born in Armenia raised more than 220 million in venture funding. And I have the list on the right side of the slide, and I would like to thank David Baldasaryan from CRISP for compiling this list. And on the other hand, we have the problem of talent. And in a recent interview, the CEO of Armenian Code Academy, which is a large training center in Armenia, announced that they expect more than 3,000 graduates from their training center only in this year. So it includes everything from software engineering to project management, HR, sales, data science, and everything that is needed by those companies which operate in the high-tech field of Armenia. And the effect of this large number of graduates in Armenia's measures is that when a famous company like CRISP is announcing an internship program in some software development field, more than 1,000 candidates apply. And these companies usually do not have the capacity to accept more than 10 or 20 interns. So a couple of things that we don't have or requires improvement is, first, we have to realize that 20,000 is too little, so it's only 3% of the workforce in Armenia, and I think we have the capacity to grow this number to at least 10%, and maybe not more than that. That's another question. So most high tech in Armenia is software engineering. That's what Aram already mentioned. So very little hardware and even less biotech or other high-tech industries that are connected to physics or chemistry. So most of it is computer science related stuff and the basic software engineering. So another thing is that most of these investments do not come from Armenian funds. So maximum investment that a company in Armenia can expect from Armenian VC funds probably does not exceed $1 million. So all these larger fundings that we see are being raised in California, which is both good and bad. There are not enough internship programs in companies, and I think this is something that we have to find solutions to increase the speed of the growth of the tech sector. And we have very deep and challenging problems like the quality of university programs, which is not adequate to the needs, just like Aram mentioned, and research, especially in computer science, is very limited. Most of the research in STEM in Armenia, academic research, happens in physics, biology, and chemistry, and very little in computer science, which is a serious bottleneck for deep tech companies. And my understanding is that a big part of the solution of all these problems mentioned is more and more efficient engagement with the diaspora. And I hope today's discussion will cover this area. Thanks.
Thank you, Hrant. So what you are saying essentially is presently we are on the right path in some sense, but the numbers are not there yet. It's just 3% of the workforce that is involved in high tech. The investments are mostly in the computer science domain, so they're not really diversified. And the possible solution is the diaspora. All right, so kind of like a brief summary here. I liked Al's breakdown in terms of simple questions of what, why, how, and so on. So, and I suggest that we kind of at first determine what is a technology hub and why we would need it. And so I would address this first question to Aram. Can you please tell us, what do you think a technology hub is, and why do we need it in Armenia?
Well, to me, technology hub is something that works like an avalanche. So one part being there helps the other part grow. It's a system that grows all by itself, being fed by the finances that get in because it generates enough business ideas, business entities, and enough business in general. So it brings in like a vacuum. It brings in a lot of resources and brings out lots of successful new branches, businesses, etc. And at the core of it is a well-established, systematic, well-thought, focused organization of science that feeds all of that with necessary, as an engine, as a machine inside, with necessary concepts, ideas, research that will satisfy the needs of the whole ecosystem. So it's kind of two-tier, or several tier could be, but generally, in an abstract level, it's two tiers. One tier is science, and on top of that, a business. But they are well integrated, they are systematic, they work with each other, there is a good handshake, and there are people around it that look after it. It can't happen all by itself. There should be a well-managed organization around it that helps that thing to happen. I'm not talking about one person. I'm not talking, I mean that without government that will never happen, but probably more than government, there should be, and I agree with all, there should be commitment from different organizations, people that think that's the best for all of them. I mean, if we work separately, each of us can do just little. But if we join our efforts in building that kind of concept, everybody will win. Everybody will get a major share of best future for their own development. So this is something that I think is important, not only to establish as a physical entity, but first and foremost, as a concept in brains of people, so that they start believing in it, hoping for it, working for it, and ultimately succeeding.
And related question, or trivial question in some sense, like why do we want to have it in Armenia?
Well, because we don't have any other choice. It's not that we have a luxury of choosing different ways to go. To me, in 21st century, that's the singular one way to go if we want to be there in 50 years from now.
Is it the problem Armenia specific that we really need to have a technology hub, or is just any country that wants to be like successful in the 21st century has to be a technology hub?
Well, any country that doesn't have immediate resources of other kind to survive until time comes for them to die. So, well, for me, we should be earlier on that way, because the more we wait, the more the way will be crowded, and there are less chances for us to succeed. So the earlier we start understanding that's the only way for us to go, the better. Let Russia still survive on oil. Let Azerbaijan survive on oil. Let Turkey survive on something else, on reselling Chinese product, basically. And let's focus on becoming the most successful country in technology in this region. That's the way to survive.
Agree. Al, what are your thoughts on what the technology hub is and why do we need it?
You know, technology hubs are, again, lots of research out there, lots of literature out there. It's basically human beings that do different things as part of a system. Like if you look at how Silicon Valley evolved, it started really with like one or two professors that really encouraged their graduate students not to go work for the big companies and actually start their own companies. And then figuring out how to get some finances, and then figuring out to create the laws, the legal infrastructure, then figuring out marketing resources, then figuring out, you know, customer relationships, then figuring out network of networks. You know, what I have advocated for the last 22 years is not to stay within just the Armenian ecosystem and the mindset. It's actually to connect to other networks. I mean, just this week, I brought 5 Americans to Armenia, and these people had never been to Armenia. Why? And I've continuously done that. Why? Because, you know, this issue of mindset, like if you're just talking to people that agree with you, right, you're going to get no evolution. You're not going to have this clash of ideas that create other ideas. The why for me is very personal. It's because Armenia as an entity matters to me, and that's the driver. And at the end of the day, you know, there's this new thing in Armenia that everybody say, well, then don't make it emotional, right? This is like very, 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 very popular now. Oh, I don't want to sound emotional, but I'm saying the actual opposite, which is without the word motion comes from emotion. If you just kind of use your head, you're going to get nowhere. It's the combination of the head and the heart that gets you somewhere. I mean, why am I sitting in Dilijan and spending this hour with you guys? It's all the heart thing. It's not the head thing. And I think as a society, this mindset that we have in Armenia and also in the Armenian diaspora, we're very, very good at pointing the fingers, blaming that somebody should do this. Somebody should create the ecosystem. Well, look at what happened the last 10 years. Lots of people came here, either visited often or, you know, engaged with others, continuously talked about the narrative of we can, therefore we will. And I think that as a technology hub, you know, Armenia has an opportunity to actually extend to become that nation of knowledge, nation of technology, you know, nation of future. But if we don't get our education system right, and if we don't inspire kids to actually want to learn, right? It's one thing to say, hey, you know, if you must learn, you must learn, you must learn, you must learn. But if you don't actually engage and inspire these kids, I mean, Haran just told you the numbers. I mean, we're a nation of 3,000 people. We have 16,000 people in tech. So we should maybe make the goal that we want 100,000 people in tech. And the why, we just answered the why, because it's actually going to be very hard to survive or to thrive. Certain segments of the population will succeed and thrive, but these are the segments that are English speaking or, you know, can connect to the, you know, to the outside, that have customers on the outside.
So we have to start thinking about it's a commonwealth for the entire nation in the end of the day. It's not only the one that is benefiting, it's like the entire nation is going to benefit if there is
absolutely
a technology hub that is out there. And by benefiting that, it also is going to create security in the longer run. I understand, right? Hrant, so what do you think is the technology hub in Armenia, and or like, you know, general technology hub? What does it entail, and why would we need it?
Yeah, probably I won't be able to add more. So technology hub, maybe one more aspect of it is, in my opinion, is a country where a large part of the population is engaged in creating solutions for the world's problems, and a lot of it is happening through technology. So this atmosphere of being part of building solutions for the country and for the world, that's the atmosphere that I imagine in a technology hub. And why do we need that? Yeah, but there are many reasons at many levels. So yeah, at the personal level, again, I want to live in such a country, so I have very personal interest in in building a technology hub for Armenia, and at the larger level, like a historic level, if you like, I agree with Aram that it's not that we have many other options to survive in this world. So being a problem solver, which is an important aspect for technology hub, is something that we have to do.
So my understanding from what we're saying from the panel itself, so that the technology hub is an ecosystem, a live ecosystem that is heavily based on science, and where the science is the core. And this ecosystem is self-propelling net of networks, like where the business and other parts of infrastructure and people and the community come together, and they essentially kind of create something that is in the end benefiting everyone in the community and around the community, not only in Armenia, but in a general kind of general world there. And the final thing, that this net of networks and the ecosystem has to be global or globally connected. So it's not like an individual kind of somewhere that they do something, but it's really like, really interconnected with the global environment that's out there. And so far, what I heard that everyone is mentioning, that science is the important ingredient, and that's actually the key ingredient that is out there. But then there were several prerequisites that I heard. The first one being education, that we really need to train these people that can go into the workforce and help with the transfer. The second one that is very important one that I kind of heard from Al and Aram saying that is the mindset or commitment or people understanding what to do. Are there any other prerequisites that you think that we might need? So education, having people, having the right way of thinking, science, anything else that we need to have in Armenia today, or that we are lacking, that we should kind of, that would help kind of foster and creating this technology hub? How, you have any thoughts on this?
I think capital is very important. Thankfully, capital is plentiful right now. I mean, capital doesn't have nationality, right? It's it's fungible. It moves wherever great ideas and great teams are. Right. I mean, just look at the first 9 months of this year for Armenia. I mean, I think overall, whether it's Armenia started Armenian company or Diaspora started Armenian company, it's close to $500 million that has been raised just in this year. Right. So capital is available. Right. And I think connecting those to those ecosystems and actually engaging people, continue doing what has been working. But now really that create a $100 million fund for the universities. One thing that we have to understand is the reality is that most of our education system is obsolete. And not only in Armenia, by the way, definitely in Armenia, for sure. Last 22 years, for myself, I have definitively answered that question. That doesn't mean that we don't have smart people, smart professors, whatever. It's just that the whole ecosystem, how we fund it, how we incentivize kids to kind of pursue education at all levels, not just that, it's obsolete, right? So let's do a national campaign where we create $100 million, $200 million fund that radically and in a short period of time transforms the Armenian education. You bring professors from India and Iran and the US, and you bring Armenian professors from all over the place, but you have to do it in a very short period of time. And I'll give you the example of what happened with Ireland, right? I used to just like always romanticize Ireland and go, oh, wow, you guys went from zero to hero in a matter of 10 years. And the head of the IDA, Ireland Development Agency, told me, he goes, Al, it's not rocket science. We brought $10 billion to the company in a matter of 5 years. And then we had Intel and Apple and everybody just came in at the same time. Can the Armenian diaspora raise a couple $100 million for the specifically for the Armenian education? Specifically for the Armenian education. With that $200 million, you can unlock another $200 million or another $300 million from international organizations that every year come to Armenia and say, hey, these loans, these programs and whatever. So we have to be smart. I mean, we always pride ourselves as being smart and problem solvers. This is a problem. It's a solvable problem.
Major problem.
It's not a major problem. Like if you really think about it, right? If you really think about it, if there's the leadership in Armenia that says, hey, that is the campaign, and all the organizations gather together and say, okay, $200 million infusion in the Armenian education system. And we know that we don't have the specialists. We know that we don't have enough modern thinkers about education, pedagogy, and everything from all layers, but specifically in the higher education. Then that is something that is going to be catalytical, right? Because if you spread it over 10 years, it might not ever get to its goal. But if you push it in a 5-year program, a 5-year quest, and you unify the diaspora, the Armenian resources, you're going to get there. I mean, we've done it without a lot of government help with the ecosystem in the startup. And it wasn't that many of us, by the way. It was like 5-10 of us. Just imagine 5-10 of us got together and created what was possible. And now you see hundreds of Armenian startups. Why? Because there was commitment, there was a long-term commitment, and we were not going to leave, the battlefront, right? We're going to continue doing to get to where. So now what we're saying is, how do we take the 200,000 or 300,000 or 400,000 Armenian kids that are going through the education system and literally create a modern educational system? And it's not that expensive.
So in the end, everything goes back to having education that can plug into the entire network that is out there. Aram, so what are your thoughts? So apart from education, science, and capital, that is apparently important, what other aspects we need in Armenia now, or we have already, that can help us create a technology hub?
Well, I want, as an educationalist, I want to further insist that the education is critically important. I do agree. I also agree that if we want to succeed in education, this should be a revolutionary effort, because education is defined by economy, and you really have to kind of establish a new reality in education, probably independent of economy, believing that will change an economy further down the road. But invest now. Well, the lack of investment in education is what we have now in economy, in our society, everywhere. But back to your question. Well, I think legal effort is very important. We have many areas in our legal system where there is not well-defined regulation for our science to develop, for our economy to develop. There is a lot of work there. And also, I believe it's very important that the scientists leave their rooms, their laboratories, and talk to people. We have to really establish an army of propaganda of science in this country, so that in every village, every parent would dream their children become scientists. They see the face of scientists very rarely, and not often the scientist is really willing to talk to them. They don't get excited when their children decide they want to become scientists. And that's a major problem. This thinking has to be shifted. And the only way to shift that is by example. So we have to see faces of people that do science, nice, very well educated, open, that can sing, dance, do fantastic things, very clever, with a lot of humor, talking to people and identifying themselves with science, so that things change. And also, we have to pick our successes that are related to science and show to people and say, it's no more buying and selling that brings you wealth. It's thinking and researching and doing some complex things that are related to technology, related to science. This is a huge effort that needs to be done. We have to establish a new thinking in our society.
And the new thinking is based on proper education essentially at the ground level, right? So
well, yeah, but what I say is that our scientists, we have to train our scientists basically. I've actually started to do that.
to get back.
Gitush, we have to train our scientists to kind of go to people, go to schools, talk to young people, talk to their parents, and convince them that science is the best way, the career, the best way to live.
Agree on that, but so we have Hrant, who is immersed in the scientific community right now in Yerevan. So Hrant, what is your view on education system and on this idea of scientists kind of going back?
I think everything Al and Aram said are true. So I agree that the educational system is close to being called obsolete. Maybe it's too hard word, but Al loves this kind of expressions and statements. So yeah, and I agree that science communication and engaging younger people in science is very weak in Armenia. And I also want to add one more thing that that is related to your earlier question about other prerequisites that is missing, is the ability to communicate not only between scientists and students in Armenia, but also between different parts of Armenian world, different types of people, different professions, different countries. So this network of networks of Armenians is not working well. So I think that's another thing. It kind of related to soft skill education, but not only. So we need
humanities part that was mentioned just earlier in the hour, right? So when we understand that how to connect all of this. Another question.
Trust connections, like how to build this mutual trust atmosphere. This is something that we should work hard to address, to leverage all this talent and resources that we have.
My understanding, what everyone is saying is essentially that there is some lack of common sense across the entire nation. By saying nation, I mean broader sort of set of people in the country and outside of the country, that we need some shared effort in doing something. That's where the lack of funding comes, right? And that's where lack of education comes and so on. So I'll mention that if we pump in money into the education system, then sort of it's going to be nice and happy and heavy. Hrant, you're right now, again referring to you just because you are right now in the education system and to a certain level, right? So if we do that, if we bring in say $100-200 million and set it up there, would the system work by itself? Would self-propel? Is Armenian system of education ready to get this money and essentially to bring up new set of generation?
So this 200 million, like I think the first 1 million or something of that should be spent on finding the managers who will lead the change. So yeah, the current managers will not be able to to digest and to spend this money well enough, like including myself. Like I'm a very small manager in a very small area in Armenia, and I don't think I can spend more than $1 million well enough. So to spend $200 million, you need to find better managers. It should be solvable problem. I don't think that it's something that
the managers, kind of follow-up question here. The managers should come from diaspora or inside Armenia, or it's just foreign people who are not Armenians at all?
I think all of it, right? So people who did not live in Armenia will not be able to adapt it to the people here. And yeah, so I think we definitely need to engage good managers in Armenia, but also bring knowledge and expertise from other countries and possibly from non-Armenians also. And I think the experience of IPE has some sort of this thing. I think both Aram and other people in IPE community have lived outside Armenia for a long period of time, and maybe he can answer better on how we should mix this.
Aram, so what are your thoughts in terms of like pumping money into the education system? Is it enough or not? Or we should have some structural changes?
Well, money can only work when there are people, and people only happen when you educate them and you make them work in a community of people alike that share joint view on strategy of how do we achieve the goals. So there should be a goal, should be a strategy, there should be people, there should be values that and ultimately these people has to be joined together. Otherwise, it's going to be a broken system. It's not going to work. So at some point, I was trying to do exactly that, but then the state policy of the government that was declared in a few years ago, in 2018, was that we don't like elite organizations in education. We want the whole education to become better at the same time, to provide equal opportunities to all the students. While I agree that in general, for the future of Armenia, that's the best goal in education strategically. In like 20 years, we probably have to achieve there, or 30 years, depending on how active we are, how successful we are. But today, what we need urgently, we need people that will be able to develop the country. And these people can be educated they can only become a reality when the most willing and talented, I don't like the word talented, I mean willing, all of the children are talented, but the most willing people, students, turn into the most willing scientists, the most willing technology development specialists, and they jointly develop the country. So for that, you have to focus, you have to define the growth points, you have to define the centers where that will allow this to happen. You can't just spread money across the whole, dysfunctional system and hope it will grow. So that's what I was trying to do, and unfortunately, that was not the strategy of the government. But now the strategy is gradually changing, hopefully. So the government is probably taking the best approach possible, developing the existing system, which is necessary. You should do that, but at the same time, helping the best organizations such as Tumo, IB, or Armat, or whatever is there already, to succeed even more, to become even more successful, because that they will bring in a chance for the best performing students, the students that are willing to learn, etc. And then they'll help the others, because it's hard when you don't have enough capacity to now get the money and use it. It's not going to work. So we need to strain the efforts of those people who are capable and bring in those that will be capable. And that way we will grow the capacity, human capacity of our nation around the key effort, which is turn Armenia into the best technology country, one of the best technology countries in the world. And then everybody will be helped by that. Everybody will be getting opportunities. We'll have much more money to pump into education. We'll redesign the school buildings. We'll have extensive trainings for teachers, and everybody will be excited. Everybody will be willing to join that success. But at the moment, we need this first, most important effort towards success, and then the rest will follow.
So people resources that can drive the effort plus capital, they can make the change, right? Al,
Yes.
you've been immersed heavily in finding these people resources. So can you comment on whether we have already people in Armenia and outside of Armenia that can make this thing happen? Do we have people with the right mindset and right set of skills and right commitment to drive this type of change or transformation?
I mean, theoretically, yes. but I'm not naive. The last 22 years, I've heard a lot of people saying, I'm committed to Armenia and I'm gonna do X, Y, Z. And I can honestly tell you, less than 5% have actually put their money where their mouth is, or their time where their mouth is. Look, these things have to simultaneously exist. We have RMAT laboratories in 500 schools right now, okay? That took the effort of Karen Vartanyan, bless his soul, and just a few people to kind of constantly drive it, a long-term commitment. Why is it not in all 1,400 schools? Money, people, commitment. Teach for Armenia, Larissa Ovanesyan started Teach for Armenia 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's in 110 schools. It's not in 1,400 schools. Why? Lack of money, lack of commitment. It's not lack of money, it's the stinginess. In reality, I am very well known to call it like it is, call reality like it is, right? If you're committed, you're committed, and you're gonna have to stay committed until you see the results. I think a few years ago, Jakob and I were talking, Jakob, myself, and a few other people were talking about recruiting 100 to 200 professors, Armenian professors from the diaspora, to commit 1 or 2 years sabbatical and simultaneously come to Armenia. Simultaneously. You look at RMAT, the government didn't start RMAT. You look at TUMO, the government didn't start TUMO. You look at Teach for Armenia, the government didn't start that. Look at IDE, the government didn't start that. So what I'm saying is, an obsolete system is not going to transform itself. So you almost have to create this parallel structure that kind of continues developing, and it becomes so strong that then it becomes the de facto. And it really
which in some sense happened. I think there was example of Silicon Valley at some point, right? Which happened in Silicon Valley. So there was government entities, organizations, and then there was self-driving push from the bottom, essentially, that created this.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you look at what Aram just said, or what I mean, you look at Hrant, right? Hrant single-handedly, or maybe with a few people, he's a very humble guy. I've known Hrant for a long time, and he created Yerevan N, right? Why? Because it didn't exist in the university system. Now he teaches in I think 1 or 2 or 3 he's taught at all 3 universities, and he's only 27 years old. Do we have Hrants out there? Sure we do. And we have them in the diaspora. So imagine this, when you ask a professor that is making $150,000 to $200,000 in some American university, you say, go to Armenia. Well, you got to cover that cost, right? That money that I talk about, the 200, whatever, call it whatever the amount, but I think it's about 200 million in my estimations. And you simultaneously bring a couple of hundred professors to Armenia. It is impossible. The system will transform. It has no other choice but to transform. Today, Hrant spends, I don't know, Hrant, you tell me what percentage of your time you spend recruiting diaspora professors to be advisors of your graduate students in Armenia. Why don't you take it away from there?
20% of my time is
20%. So 20% of his time is calling and engaging with diaspora or other, I think it's mostly Armenians, but other professors, because we don't have proper professors and quantia professors in Armenia to be advisors of graduate students. Can we solve that problem? Absolutely, we can solve that problem. But imagine imagine that those professors are here in Armenia. Those 2-year sabbaticals, they're here in Armenia. They're looking at the students every day. They're advising them every day, every week, versus figure out a Zoom call and figure out this. We got to kind of get it more into a systematic situation, and I think money will help in that area.
So what you're saying, like, kind of just let me understand here. So we do have right people, but they are scattered around. We just need to group them somehow to create an infrastructure for them to come in and start doing this work. And for that, we need the capital, right? Okay, good. My other question is related to all of this. Suppose that we did this, we brought the money, we changed the infrastructure by bringing in right people, and now we have a great education system that does work and somehow it does magic and creates really great people. How do we retain people back in their places? Hrant, you know this better. How do we? So we train, we invest a lot of money, and we prepare like really PhDs and master students and bright people, talented people. How do we keep them in Armenia? And not like, let them go, say, to Germany or US?
I think that part is easier in some sense. So there are people who will leave and you can't do anything with that. But for most part, I think the industry who can employ these people will appear there immediately. Like, I think everyone in the world is looking for talent. And if you have a good PhD program, many companies, many industries will smell it from very far distance and will immediately come and try to get the students first. So I'm quite confident in this because this is happening even without having these PhD students. So I can't imagine what will happen.
So what you're saying essentially, it goes back to this idea of ecosystem of networks, self-propelled, that if there is a critical mass of educated people in the country, like really talented ones, then essentially it automatically within a few years will drive this ecosystem and it will start kind of self-propelling at some point, right? That's
I think right now, even local existing companies have the capacity to employ many of these graduates. And even without these big investments in education, like only today I heard about 2 more companies that are going to open branches in Armenia. Like 2 days ago, the founder of Sada Systems was talking on public television in Armenia and announcing their plans to grow. And I get emails from, I don't know, Russian employees of Huawei, the Chinese giant, who are looking for professors and companies in Armenia to find whom they can hire or which companies they can acquire. So all of this is happening even without this investments in education. So I'm confident that every good graduate of a good educational system will have plenty of options to work in Armenia in the tech sector. And yeah, they will definitely have options in other countries as well. And they will have plenty of choice in any case, and they do have now. So yeah.
May I
yes,
a single idea? I would not be concerned about young scientists leaving Armenia for scientific research or whatever to other countries. I will actually be happy about it because that's how science works.
it's global.
It worked. Yeah, Kapitsa is one of the most famous Russian scientists that actually is behind the modern Russian science in physics and everything. He went to Rutherford laboratory and worked there for 20 years and became one of his best students. So this is happening and it should happen. And I think the only thing that we should be caring about is how attractive are we for scientists to work and live here in Armenia? And if we do that, ultimately, all of these people, and probably some other people, why don't we talk about Indian scientists, Iranian scientists, Russian scientists, American scientists, not necessarily Armenian, coming here and working in science? Science is already international, and it used to be international for the whole 20th century. I mean, in American universities, there are many people from Europe. In European universities, there are many people from America. And it's like that. People find together for joint interest, for joint effort. And this is not necessarily national. So we should look at a wider picture of how we become attractive, not about how we retain our young people in Armenia.
That's I absolutely agree on that. So I also think, being myself in the scientific community in US, I don't think that the science has a nationality as such. It's just It's just creating the conditions where people can thrive, and then they just contribute to it. Al, you wanted to add something?
I was going to say something because Arthur, you were at UCLA. Like if somebody came to you and said, look, in your area of research, you said, we're going to give you a $10 million lab in Armenia. We're going to allow you another $10 million, whatever, another $2 million to bring your postdocs in your area of research, right? And then we're going to have continuous funding from a standpoint of how you can connect to other universities. I can continue working with UCLA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's what it takes. I mean, how do you think American universities attract professors from each other? Right now, I mean, this is still very premature, but let's say I'm being asked to be, I don't want to talk about that, but so let's say a university in the Midwest wants to attract a bunch of scientists from all over the world. You know what? We know what it takes. It says it's $100 million. We want to be like Stanford. We want to be like whatever. Now, in the context of Armenia, what Aram said way earlier in our discussion, as I want to echo, which is value systems, right? Why do I come? I was born in Iran. Why do I want to come to Armenia? It's everything else here that is attracting me. It's not national. It's Dilijan. It's the culture, right? We have to make Armenia an attractive place, not just for Armenians, but for all sorts of nationalities that want to come here. And I think that's the issue, right? Which is, if we really think about it, it goes back to value systems, mindset, commitment, and what is that future that we are living. So Hrant probably gets on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, I don't doubt it, probably 15 to 20 offers to leave Armenia. Why is he not leaving Armenia? Because he has something in his heart that is keeping him here to build Yerevan and to teach the next set of students, to help the educational systems grow. So we have to understand that it is beyond money, it is beyond intellect, it is beyond technical capability. It's something else that has to kind of connect us together, that commits us to the long term.
Yeah, and in the end, it goes back to the education system that has to prepare and train and spread out the world at the broader level, not only Yerevan, because like going to the villages and telling people that science is important, and so on. So this goes back to the education, so can train people from the ground. Yeah. Aram, I think one topic that we talked about is the government, and so my question is, there was an idea from Al, for example, that we need to have some parallel sort of infrastructure that is out there. My question is kind of a little bit abstract here, but in the context, should the government be involved in this kind of transition, or what? How can the government help, or we should do it without the government?
My experience dealing with government, I have a pretty long experience dealing with government, first in Russia and then in Armenia, is that the government is inefficient and is most often too prone to political changes and to many other issues that the government people face. So I believe a strong country is a country with strong institutions. Institutions define strong countries, not the government itself. And with good institutions, we will have good government. So our effort should be around building strong institutions that have influence in a country. Your influence will extend on government people. Moreover, the more influence you have, the more government will be willing to work with you, because they will not face any objection in a society. They will get whatever resources it gets from you, because you are willing to support whatever effort you see being important. They will get success in their hands from you, and they can report to the nation that it was the government success, which is happening all the time, but it's okay. And then so they'll be very happy. So if you want the government to do whatever you want, just establish a good, strong institution, effort, movement, or whatever, and just do your job properly. Sooner or later, the government will be with you. the society will be with you. And the focus of us developing science, developing technology in the country should be not the government, should be society. That was a major mistake of many efforts. They would focus on dealing with government, forgetting about society. It's not going to work. The major focus should be people, mindset, understanding of what you want, whatever. And then the government will follow. Which is right. Democracy works like that. If we want democracy and not, autocracy, then that's the way to go.
Absolutely agree on that. With one small kind of comment in here, we mentioned during this discussion somewhere that somewhere there has to be a center of pushing all of this. So someone has to stand up and say that, okay, let's have this $100 million campaign for education system. Let's bring in managers. So there should be some center that is organizing all of this and so on. Now, if you're saying that this should be not in the government somewhere else, how do we kind of create?
There were historically in Armenia, there is the most amount of NGO per capita. So Armenia is prone to this, establishing NGOs for, if you want to cough, you establish the NGO where people can come and cough without being, considered as potentially COVID or whatever. So you can do whatever you want. In Armenia, you have an NGO for that. But the real NGO is not that. The real NGO is not something that is designed to spend some grant or some money coming from somewhere. The real NGO is a real joint effort of people that have gotten together around a common interest. And this interest is more just their personal interest. It's a public good. So we join efforts for public good, and then it will happen. And then we will find and we'll hire good people that are sharing our vision, that have more time, that are dedicated. We establish connections, we establish networks, we help with our networks, this effort, and it ultimately will happen.
Yeah, I think there's a good example of it. Recently, Tigran Shaverdian initiated. We had a conversation about a year ago, and Tigran was very passionate about science education and funding and all that stuff. I said, Tigran, why don't you start something? Why don't you start talking to everybody, right? And now Gitush, which I'm sure Hrant and Aram can say much more about him than I can, was able to actually influence and pressure the government to increase science funding, just in a short, very, very short period of time, because it's a committed group of people that got together and said that this matters, this is important. And I'll pass it to Hrant or Aram to say more.
Just kind of like a summary of what both of you are saying is that we need more dedicated lobbying organizations within Armenia that would...
Not only lobbying, acting. It's not only lobbying, it's actually joining people's effort around things. We are not only lobbying, we are supporting different institutions now at the same time to establish their programs, strategies. We are working with lawyers. We are doing many things, and we are planning even more. And that's a very good example, actually, how it works. And we actually never pushed the government. What happened? Yeah, at some point we came and said, but what happened ultimately? We convinced them. This is now the real. It's not that the prime minister is being pushed by us. Hardly any person can push him at the moment. But he's now convinced. We've managed to do that, and that's even more of a success than pushing someone to do something.
Agree. Hrant, in your opinion, what the government can do to help education and science right now? Like today, for example?
Yeah, the first and obvious answer is to do what Gitush asks to do. So Gitush is really a successful case that proves Aram's point that in Armenia, in the sort of democratic system that we have, this kind of approach works very well. So if you earn support from the society, then the government is willing to do that for obvious reasons. That's definitely one direction that we should work on. With my experience working with the government, I see that there are many bureaucratic reasons that the government is not efficient, is not able to do large things, implement big ideas, and maybe there is a need for structural reform there to make the processes more efficient, to enable these different officials in the government to have more time to actually think.
Which in fact actually goes back to training personnel for government management, and it's again education systems.
Some part of it is about training, but maybe there are also other things that can be fixed with legal changes. I'm not a big expert on that, but at least I see the symptom that if a good expert goes and serves in the government, at some point you realize that the only time they can actually think about doing new things is like Saturday evening or Sunday evening, because there is so much paperwork that they have to respond to. Many of them are useless, but probably not all of them, so you just cannot ignore everything. So I feel this need from the government, especially those people in the government who actually care and want to develop their corresponding fields. They kind of ask for help from the society, and that's where initiatives like Gitush succeed. So if you have a non-governmental institution, probably in other countries this role is covered by think tanks and organizations like that. Again, I'm not a big expert on that, but I'm sure that this is not a problem that was born in Armenia. So yeah, these kind of organizations can spend some quality time in building strategies and build their agenda, and then communicate to the government and find relevant people in the government and convince them to do the work. On the other hand, maybe we should also create an atmosphere where people with good execution skills actually want to work in the government. This is another thing that I think a lot about, and I think especially when there are deep political issues between different parties and things like that, many people want to avoid everything related to the government, to not get into this fights and into this bad atmosphere, which is very bad for the country in general. So I think in some sense, as a society, we need to somehow incentivize good people to get into that, and do not blame them for becoming part of a political team or supporting a political team that we don't like, just to encourage good people, people with good execution skills to get into these roles. That would be another direction to make government more efficient.
Can these changes, like small changes that you mentioned in some sense, be done today? I mean, or it requires some unforeseeable effort, I don't know.
I think in some places I see these changes. Like at least in
trend is positive. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So I think over the last 3 years, if I look who are trying to become the head of some committees or some branches, like not a minister level, but some officials in the government who are responsible for science, I would not believe that they would get into the government like 5 years ago. So there is some positive change there, definitely, and we have to encourage these people that they take the risk and get into these roles, and support them every way we can. So that's definitely one direction.
Okay, I have a couple more questions that are here. So we mentioned that the computer science is the key area where development is happening right now. Are there any other technology areas that you think, Aram, that we can push forward and that we should expand into?
Well, that's a good question. This question has been researched many times in the past. What I think is that there are obvious, candidates that quite obvious. Everybody needs some kinds of technologies, but also there are like areas where I think the world is being challenged, and Armenia has a very specific goal. It is that we need to become more valuable for the world, for the humanity. And for that, we have to join in, even probably without foreseeing an immediate cashback. Jump into the solving global problems. Because through that, being connected to value chains that are involved in solving critical global problems will be involved in with a level of communication with networks that will put us on a map of valuable countries, valuable people, valuable entities that will help protect us from potential threats of different kinds. So in general, I think we have a very own specific kind of goals in front of us that are defined by our history, our existing competence, our potential future competence, and the value chains that we are involved in already. And we have to decide a pretty complex problem, which is not complex per se as a way of decision making. It's more complex in a way of research and analysis of all of the incoming factors, to factor in all of the necessary and proper things before making a proper decision. And I think that's the way.
Thanks. Any thoughts on what are the directions that we should expand into, or just computer science is the one?
No, I think so. I've been involved in ag tech for the last several years, and of course, this is the thing: the computer science, it's horizontal. It touches everything. That's why I'm saying there's no such business as not technology business. You look at restaurants today, right? Delivery systems. You look at anything you want to think about. Technology is at the core of it, and specifically computer science is at the core of it. So it's no surprise that I think it was like 60% or 70% of all students at Stanford take computer science courses, just to be kind of educated about it, not necessarily to become a programmer. I think what is very promising and very, very hopeful is the flexibility of some of our institutions like AUA and other organizations, other universities that are starting to kind of react to what is the market want. When I was talking about obsolete systems, it's really looking at how flexible is that system and what is the inertia in some of these systems. And I think if we can continue to encourage so that there's not duplication of efforts across the educational system, and that there's more collaboration, there's more unification. Like, I mean, for instance, I'll give you an example. We're talking to, let's say, computer science, right? Computer science education, but in the context of ag tech. Well, guess what? There could be agricultural students and computer science students that are collaborating and maybe taking some courses on the same university campus. Maybe that they do joint projects. Maybe there's labs that kind of bring these people together. So I'm a big advocate of open, transparent, frequent collaboration driven by big goals. If it's not big enough to scare you, it's not worth doing it. It is incremental thinking that we have to absolutely destroy in our mentality. It's a mindset problem. We keep going and putting a Band-Aid on these gunshot wounds and saying, well, send me more Band-Aids. It's not about Band-Aids. It's about big, bold initiatives. I worked for the 10 years of my career, I worked for a Japanese company. I went to Japan 50 times. And one ministry, Ministry of Trade and Industry, chose priorities for the entire nation. It wasn't that they were saying, hey, if you choose to not do these 4 priorities, that you can't do it. They were just saying, we're not gonna encourage it, we're not gonna fund it, we're not gonna, you see what I'm saying? So it's no accident that the car industry became so successful in Japan. It's no accident that, you know, semiconductor industry became, and then, you know, the Koreans copied and followed them. It's actually a game, right? It's exciting. It's exciting to play in that game. And I think that's what we're missing. We're constantly looking at problems that are, let me go solve this small problem. And then when we have more money, we'll go and address the bigger problems. The biggest thinkers, the best thinkers in the world, they want to do bold things. Armenian or non-Armenian?
And
Armenian or it doesn't matter.
Usually, in my experience, at least that's what I've seen, that the bigger the idea, the more drive and push it gets. Like in the end of the day, like capital, people, and everyone wants to go after it.
Look, Aram said it very, very well. It's about humans. AI, without humans, it doesn't mean anything. What do you mean AI? In the service of what? And I think that's what we have to get as a community on this call. Every one of us can call 50 people after this 2-hour session and inspire people that says, oh, you know what? And, you know, any one of us, any one of you can actually lead this charge and say, you know, in my community, I'm going to raise 10 million. I'm going to connect to 5 other community leaders. And I'm going to, it's not about only the money. Everybody thinks that it's all about the money. No, money is energy. Money is energy that if the ideas are big enough, bold enough, valuable enough, inspirational enough, the money shows up. The war started last year, a year ago, and within a couple of weeks, Armenians raised a couple $100 million, right? Where 10 years before that, we weren't able to raise that much money because the challenge was big enough. It woke us up. And I'm saying a year after the war, we've gone back to our insomnia, back to, all right, you know, it is what it is. We did our best a year ago. So that self-generation of education matters, technology hubs matter, I matter, my country matters, the state of those 200,000-300,000 kids that are going to school right now, they need to have people that they look up to and say, you know what, big enough, bold enough, they have to believe in themselves. There's several I just was checking who's on the call. There's several scientists, and if you just kind of go to the questions, Aaron can point them all out. They all came from Armenia, but somebody inspired them, and now they are doing research in some of the top universities in the world. And these people are on this call because they care, because they want to do their best. They want to bring stuff back to Armenia. That's the message here, which is, I mean, I'm not lecturing or giving a message, but the bottom line of it is what has been true for myself personally is that the idea has to be big enough, the money shows up. That's what it really is gonna, what it's gonna take, that we have to look at transforming the entire education system. When we get together and go to the government with 300 people or 500 people as the signatories, they're like, these are potential voters. And these 500 people that signed this thing might know another 20,000 people that are gonna vote. And that's a beautiful thing. I think I'm very positive about how we can move forward together. We just have to make sure that our ideas are big and bold.
That's a great one. And then another part that you mentioned is the community building, like, you know, transfer of ideas between diaspora and Armenia itself and in the global scale. Speaking of diaspora, it's actually the last topic that I wanted to cover briefly, and we are running towards the end of the second hour, actually. So just kind of brief comments here from the panelists that I want on diaspora. I know, Hrant, you wanted to talk a little bit about diaspora. And so can you tell us what the diaspora is doing right and what it's not doing right enough to kind of foster the technology hub, kind of, you know, creating a technology hub?
I think the role of the diaspora is in making Armenian tech sector better is actually larger than many people realize. I have seen a comment by our friend Adam Bittlingmeyer, who lived in many countries and moved to Armenia, I think 5 or 6 years ago. And he wrote a blog post about tech ecosystems in Armenia and Georgia. And the biggest difference that he sees in the Armenian tech ecosystem when compared to Georgia is that Armenian diaspora is working better. So otherwise you have very similar mathematics schools, heritage from Soviet Union, and lots of things are very similar. Having said that, there is a lot more that we can do, and I'm actually over this past month trying to build a relatively simple guide for everyone in the diaspora who wants to contribute to the tech ecosystem in Armenia. So I started it from a narrow field of AI, but then tried to enlarge the scope of the guide, and if possible, I'd like to share the current version of it with all of you and maybe get feedback and encourage all of you to contribute to such process. How can we streamline and make the process of engaging diaspora in the tech sector of Armenia more efficient? So I have created a couple of slides that present the main directions, the main channels that we can engage better with the diaspora. So the first direction is through donations, which is probably the easiest and the least efficient way to help Armenian tech sector. So I think it was mentioned a few times today that whenever there is a good idea, the money appears, and that's true for Armenia as well. And just sending the donation, it is helpful, but it is the least helpful way of contributing to Armenian tech sector. And having said that, we also know that even here there are many problems with trust, with quality of the projects. And one idea that I would like everyone to know about is Armenia platform, which was actually launched today. It is a website where many projects that contribute to the development of Armenia will be hosted, and these projects go through a very long process of due diligence and checks and many other procedures to make sure that they are trustworthy, and there are advisory boards that filter these projects before they appear on their website. And I'd like to say that the educational projects are filtered, are screened by an advisory board which is led by Aram Pakchanyan. But if we want to have more fruitful engagement of the diaspora, we need to think beyond this. And here are 4 more directions that I can present. So the second one is investing in the tech companies that are born in Armenia. So there are many good pipelines for doing this. There are at least 3 angel networks that operate in Armenia, and AliASIAN is part of one of these networks. And there are VCs, venture capital funds that operate in Armenia. So everyone interested in investing in those companies, for example, below I have a screenshot from SmartGate VC's portfolio, and it lists Crisp and Superannotate, both of which are roughly $100 million companies right now. And SmartGate was an early investor, so everyone who wants to be an early investor in any of the future Crisps and Superannotates can talk to them. And these networks are getting larger and larger. I know that 1 more angel network will be announced soon at least, and at least 3 more VC funds. So the third direction is actually teaching. So there are many ways to contribute to the education. There are online tech communities that work pretty well in Armenia, like Facebook groups or even Slack channels and LinkedIn groups, where people talk about some technical topics, and people from diaspora can actually join and participate in the discussions and answer the questions from newbies. And Armenia is also an important collaboration platform where I think many initiatives will be posted in the next months and years, and these initiatives will require collaborators from tech industry, and again diaspora, and people can join as a collaborator and look where they can contribute. There are other ways to engage in education. Again, giving a guest lecture, this is something that is being practiced now pretty well. You can teach for a few months. There are good examples of researchers and engineers from the US that actually taught a course in machine learning remotely over the past year at Armenian Code Academy. And the best way to teach is to actually spend a sabbatical in Armenia. We are happy that Naira Hovakimian from UIUC will spend her sabbatical in Armenia next year, and there are many other examples. The fourth direction is to supervise students, to mentor students. So one semi-solution to this problem is this Ketake Club website, which we built with a couple of friends from the UK and Yerevan. It's a place where everyone can register and propose a project that can become a project for a student. It can eventually become a master thesis or an undergrad thesis or even PhD if there is enough commitment from the supervisor. And then students look at this project and apply for them and get connected to the supervisors. And there are 45 projects now and 13 projects started. We had 3 or 4 theses completed through this platform in May, June this year. And finally, the most efficient way to contribute to Armenia is to relocate, actually. And I want to highlight how much a single person can do if relocated to Armenia. And there is an example of our good friend Ruben Meschan. So his story is in 2012, he came for 2 weeks in Armenia and gave a couple of lectures at American University of Armenia. And then next year he came for, I don't know, a month. And the next year he came for 2 months and gave more lectures. And in 2015, he moved to Yerevan with his family. And next year he started to teach introductory course on computer science in AUA. And over 3 years, he taught JavaScript to more than 300 students there. Last year, actually during the war in October, he started a video course in Armenian on programming. It's free on YouTube. And so far he has recorded more than 140 videos, and YouTube says that there are total 300,000 views of his videos. So literally a single person who moved to Armenia, understood the needs, talked to people, got to know what students are looking for. He literally helps thousands of people to get involved in the tech community, to see how easy it is to get into this career path. And I think people like him really contribute to these large numbers of students who go to these training centers or take choose these professions in STEM fields in computer science. And that's all that a single person who relocates to Armenia can do. And I also want to mention that he works full-time in his US company. So it's not that he let everything else and works only on this. So for relocation, I see some progress. Several companies in Armenia have released their announcements that they offer relocation packages, like Render Forest, one of the companies that launched their relocation program this week. The head of SADA Systems was talking on TV and was telling that they can do everything to help relocating. There is this IT is Armenia organization which helps local Armenian companies to hire from abroad. And I was talking to their CEO today, and he said that they're going to increase their efforts in the next month to make this more efficient. There is this Landed project by Hero House. In science, we know that there is going to be a repatriation grant for researchers. Science committee is designing this, and if this new budget of science is approved by the parliament, the committee will have the funds to try the first version of this. And I was positively surprised when I saw that the Office of Diaspora Affairs recently created a repatriation guide with lots of details about technical and bureaucratic issues that everyone can encounter when moving to Armenia. So I would love everyone to know about this. So if we order all these things by increasing impact, so these are the 5 ways I think diaspora can be engaged: donations, investments, teaching, supervision, and actually relocating. I will share these slides with everyone, and yeah.
Thank you, Grant. Very, very nicely put. I love it. So we are running kind of late, but I think we have several questions in the chat that I'd love our panelists to kind of briefly address it. And the first one is actually related to diaspora. It's a question here. So hubs are by their nature multidisciplinary. Aram, you mentioned that a lot of potential resources are in Armenia. They are segregated. So how do we bring these segregated resources together and promote these active collaborations? So I guess it's a question to Aram.
Well, that requires some policy, but also even more than that, it requires, again, establishing a culture of collaboration. We Armenians are not very good at that. We should admit that. We are not very good collaborators. We all very often look at differences than the things that combine us, join us together. So we should learn and show examples of collaboration and learn to kind of spread the culture of collaboration amongst our peers, talk to them. Whenever they start, blaming others, stop them from doing that. Instead, make them think positively and, talk about potential instead of he's bad or whatever. So this is something we have to change in our minds first. Everything, nothing will work when it comes from top to bottom. Whatever organizational effort, whatever. Anybody who worked in large organization, especially when they managed large organization, knows that it doesn't work like that. Before enforcing any new rules, any new kind of situation, any new structure, you have to work with people. You have to make people accept that. You have to change the culture a little bit towards what you want them to do. And then gradually, or probably immediately if you want to stress, that also works, introduce a new system. One doesn't work without the other. It will be empty and hollow. So I think our problem is we all have to learn to collaborate. And all of us tomorrow waking up, think of what kind of collaboration I can be joining, what kind of collaboration I can establish, what problems I see that are coming from nowhere, that are non-existent actually, but are only happening because some few people don't want to listen to each other and don't want to find ways to work together instead of blaming each other. So this is something we should work on.
Agree. There's another question, I think two small questions to Al, if you would take them, quick one. So the first one is Ireland did sort of, technology hub type of thing. Ireland did that by lowering corporate tax. Can Armenia do the same thing to get the big money by just not like, lowering the taxes, but not only kind of relying on diaspora to get this $200 million? And the second small question is like in terms of the area, do you think the car manufacturing is the area to develop? Al?
Yes and no.
So good one. So we can work with the government to change the taxing policy, and the second one is that the car manufacturing is not the only area that is out there. Agree?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. So let's see. I'm just skimming through the chat to see whether there are other questions, and there's a lot of debate going on, and I think that everyone is agreeing with the panelists. So it's apparently that we had really great discussion here, and everyone is supporting what we're saying here. Let me see. Lot of discussion going on, and I think this comment is right, Grant. I couldn't agree more. I want to share our NGO's experience, which has little contribution in education, especially during this pandemic. We managed to train hundreds of teachers by improving their digital skills. So it's like NGO experience that is out there. So Hrant, someone is agreeing with you. The question, I don't know to whom it is addressed, but let me read it. Do you know what is the American Darpa, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency? Is there the Armenian Darpa for the Defense Ministry? I think I will address it to Hrant.
Yeah, I think I can take that. So there is an organization structure in the government which is supposed to do something that DARPA does, but in my opinion, it is missing the most important component of DARPA. So the driving force of DARPA are those program managers who actually define the problems and are kind of acting like a product owner in a startup, right? They define the problem, they organize the contest between scientific teams, and then they fund them, they work with them, get feedback, and kind of guide these teams to do whatever DARPA really needs, and also talks to them, gets feedback to improve the problem statement itself, so it's not like hard written in the wall. So all these things are done by these program managers who are kind of leading the entire process. So there are no program managers in the structures that we have in Armenia. So the process is not as well defined. It's not obvious who is making the final decision on what the product that we will build looks like. How should it be? How should it evolve, and things like that. So all these decisions are not centralized, and I think there is need for this person in those structures. Like in DARPA, these program managers are former scientists or people in science who actually know what is science and want to work for the government for this thing. So this concept of program manager does not exist in the Armenian structures, and I think that's where we should start if we want to have something similar to DARPA.
I agree. And the last question that we have in the chat is regarding science centers. I think that this I will address it first to Al very briefly, and then to Aram. So regarding the science centers, so we all seem to agree that we need this, extensive science centers. So Al addressed saying that we need to have some funding and some founders. So I think the question is, what is the best model? How do we bring these people in, right? So just to be specific, which model would work best? Best you think? Should these be individuals? So shall we try to do with the path of Giddush, reach the society, and then pressure the government? So what is the best kind of model? Well, you first. You're muted.
I am very inspired with Giddush. I think it got its momentum because it was started properly. It was started with people that have credibility, that they're scientists themselves. It's not some guy from the outside coming and saying you should do this. And I think that's a very, very good momentum to rally around. So everybody on this call, and then the 50 people that they're going to be able to call to kind of be supportive. Giddush could be that engine, because it does definitely have the right leadership. It has, I'm very convinced that it has the right leadership. it has the right goals, that they have thought it through. It's very scientific, very, and also it's one of those things that from an inspiration perspective of the next generation is very much right on. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm not qualified to comment on anything with government. So most entrepreneurs have this sort of very, very skeptical view of government, period, everywhere, by the way, not just in Armenia, everywhere. So everything that I have seen work in my career has started with a few crazy people that have said that this is going to happen. We're going to make it happen. And I think with Gitush, you've got the right core of people that are rallying around to kind of get this thing moving. So I would say supporting Gitush would be a very good start.
Aram, very briefly, can you comment on this one? Also muted.
The same problem. Because I'm one of the people behind Gitush, I've helped to establish the organization. We are now in the process of deciding how we go further with the formal organization, foundation or whatever, and charter and everything. I can say that it's a trustworthy organization, so it can be one of the centers of collecting resources for further focused, well-established, well-managed development and transparent development of the science centers. But in general, of course, we have to continue growing momentum around the idea of science being the only key solution to many of our troubles as a society. Because it spreads, it spills way beyond, just, technology. A society where science is strong is a different society. People are very different. Even those that are not involved immediately in science, they are so different. Their thinking is different. So it's an important goal for us as a nation to get back to the train of science. We've been there. In the Soviet times, Armenia was basically Silicon Valley, one of the major science centers in the country. We've had an amazing amount of research institutions. Very many people were involved in research, and we could feel that. We felt that the society was very different then. Well, it was confined in terms of ideology, but beyond that, culturally, mentally, we were very developed. So we have to go back to that, and we have to convince people, those that can think, those that they believe in the future, that's the only future. And then we'll find resources, we'll find people involved, we'll find people that will be donating in that, feeling that this is the most important goal, this is the most important cause. Well, I think that's what we have to do.
Agree. And I think with this, I can summarize pretty much all our panel that we talked about. So the important part is understanding the question of why. So why technology hub and so on. And I think we addressed that. It's the only way for us to kind of prosper in the future. We said that there are a lot of ingredients that needs to be done to create this system or ecosystem of networks globally integrated and so on. But one of the key and major ingredients is the education system. And if we develop it to a proper level, then we'll have certain critical mass of people that can create a self-sustainable environment. To do that, we need two things. We need people in terms of managers that can make this drive from the inside. And the second one is the capital. And we have within the global community, we have these resources, which means people and the capital. We just need to have the commitment behind all of this so that the people can organize and come in here. And then once this happens, then pretty much we see that the pathway for the development can happen. One aspect that was discussed also is that all of this can be done. It's great to rely on the government and help the government to change and drive the government change, but it's also we can do it in parallel as a diaspora and as just NGO organizations, creating some parallel structures that can drive this change. And we had a lot of discussions and great topics here. And I would like to thank panelists for their time and for their great thinking in here. So thank you very much. Hagop, do you want to say several words closing here?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Arthur, for this excellent moderation, and thanks every panelist for their excellent input. We have a lot of material to think about, and therefore we have a lot of material to act on. So let's act on it, and let's try to get something going. As Al said, let's get together and work together and try to make a change. That's what it takes. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.